they are looking for people to provide proof of folks that they have on a list, it seems, of whom they would like to target. Did you read it that way?
Absolutely. It seemed to me there was no proof, but they're trying to go out there and find somebody who will make a case against all of these people. That's why they had to do the disclaimer. It was completely embarrassing to imply that they have a case against these people or that there's a pending case, none of which is true. They're looking to find people. That's it.
Judge, it is maddeningly, frustratingly, all those words, nerve-wracking to listen to an acting attorney general responding in a way that he did to Sean Hannity, saying the things that he's been saying about criminalizing innocent individuals, their behavior, their past behavior. The only reason anyone should be brought on charges or our government should go after them with legal consequences is if they committed a crime. And the only reason anybody has gone after Donald Trump is because he's been alleged and in some cases found responsible for behavior that has gotten him into court. And so this idea that we're now supposed to sit back and believe that the entire universe of people out there are somehow gunning for Trump afterwards, so we got to fix the system now, begs a question for me. And I'm curious your thoughts. I've been mulling this for a while. The idea, given what we've seen over the last 10 years with this specific office of the Attorney General, as a judge, what are your thoughts to having that office filled by the choice of the people as opposed by the choice of the president?
Well, the president has always been allowed to pick the attorney general, for sure. Anybody in his cabinet is picked by the president. But it has been a tradition since Richard Nixon that the White House and the DOJ would be very separate. And there were people who wouldn't even attend dinners, wouldn't talk to each other, completely separate. The AG, the president, never met, never talked. This is what is so different now, that this president is essentially telling the Department of Justice who to prosecute, what to do, what cases to bring, what cases to drop. I mean, they're really acting like his personal attorneys, which they were. Todd Blanche certainly was. Bondi had worked on his cases, too. I mean, there's no question that these people are his loyalists, and he's treating them that way. He's directing them. We had emails where he told Bondi what to do and said, get on it, do it. And now he's treating Blanche the same way. So this is a very different situation than we've seen for 50, or is it 70 years now? 70 years? But now that's the way it is. This is Donald Trump at his worst.
I think about the letter that you signed on to, along with 34 other judges, the motion that you filed in the IRS case. And there have been critics that have come forward that have said, essentially, this is not how former judges ought to be using their power, their position. It would seem to me that there was never a more important time for former judges to reminding us of what life looks like in the pre-upside down. But I wonder how you respond to those critics.
Well, interestingly, these amicus briefs that the former judges have signed and the brief in that case that you mentioned are completely bipartisan. We'll get 50 Republican-appointed judges, 50 Democrat-appointed judges to sign on to these briefs. Some of these briefs have had 180 signatures. So my view is what they are doing is defending the judicial system. They're defending the integrity of the courts. And that is a fair role for former judges. Who else should speak out rather than former judges? They know the system, they know what the courts should do, and they know what the courts are entitled to hear from lawyers, namely honesty and candor. They have a right to speak out. So I reject that criticism. Former judges have always filed amicus briefs, and they should. They should speak out.
The judges should speak out. I think the former elected officials who privately lambast what the president and his allies are doing, yet publicly say nothing, should speak out. I think the military should speak up and speak out. But I think the folks who, have sworn an oath to our Constitution, to specifically folks who have worked in the Department of Justice, people who are retired judges like yourself. I think that they have a little bit of an extra, in my opinion, responsibility right now. And credibility, yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Judge, I was doing my research, and during Reconstruction is when the Department of Justice was created. At the founding of this country, there was not a Department of Justice. It was created during Reconstruction to beat back the Ku Klux Klan, to provide a bulwark for the people so that the rights that the government at the time were saying should be afforded to all are actually afforded to all. It was not created to serve the petty whims of one man. Yet this Department of Justice has been re-engineered to do just that. And so while people are speaking out, I think folks also have to be honest that it's not going to be enough to just go back to how things were before. What has happened has broken the department, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. Some of us have a phrase we call the Department of Injustice. I'm sorry to say that, but it's a nickname that some of us feel because they are going after the president's enemies at his direction, and they are dropping cases against real criminals at his direction. This is not the way it's supposed to be. This should be an independent agency that follows the law, follows the facts, brings cases when they're warranted, does not bring cases that they can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So this Department of Justice has acted differently than any that I can remember. And the charge that the Biden administration was weaponized in the same way because it indicted President Trump several times is just rings false to me. The evidence in that Mar-a-Lago classified documents case was completely obvious. I mean, we have Bolton, who just pled guilty to a single count. My goodness, the president's Mar-a-Lago residence was full of these boxes of top secret material. It would have been the easiest of the cases to prove. And the other case, the January 6th case, again, there was real evidence that he had given directions and he expected certain things to happen. He said, basically, let's go out there and make trouble. I mean, these were good cases. So it's easy to say that, oh, the Biden administration was weaponized against me. Well, it so happens you engaged in conduct that was worthy of an indictment, and a grand jury found that there should be indictments. Several grand juries, I must say, several cases.
That point.
I mean, clock it.
Right there. You did it.